I want to talk about um, a deep trance medium, Steve Woods. In my opinion, there aren't that many deep trance mediums, really good ones, in the world. But Steve has been doing this for 25 to 30 years.
One could often ponder if you had a chance to pick anybody that you would from either the present or the past that you could have lunch with, who would that be? And you just talked about a few dozen people that would certainly make my short list. So,
Yes.
but you talked about Mary. So my question to you is, in your discussions with Mother Mary,
Uh-huh.
does she affirm her presence at Fatima and Lourdes? And does she give any more meaning to her prophecies at Fatima by any chance?
She has confirmed that. I did ask her about Lourdes, and I said, "Were you the Lady of Lourdes?" And she said, "Yes." I didn't know that much about her prophecies, so I never asked her. Um, you know, she said, Jesus and I never wanted to be placed on a pedestal. We didn't come into this lifetime to be put on a pedestal. We wanted to teach people to be of service to others. And I've heard Jesus say, he said, people pray to me to get great riches, or they pray to me to win the soul of another individual, in love. He says, I'm not interested in that. He said, I'm interested in helping people to be of service to others. Again, same theme. And he's been wonderful to speak to. And he's told me, I've asked him several, direct questions. He has told me, he said, a lot of people think that you lived a life to save them from their sins. He said, and he was very clear. He said, I never said that. I never told anybody I was the one responsible for their salvation. He said, you have to save yourself, which as metaphysicians, we would know that. So he's been a great person to talk to. And Mary has too. I'll tell you, when we interviewed, if you don't mind me detouring a slight bit, when we interviewed Joseph, now, we had in Sarasota, we had master teacher classes every Wednesday, and I sat in those for 20 years. We'd have master teachers from all over the universe would come in and speak on any subject somebody would offer. But I'd never heard Joseph speak before, never. So I did interview him a couple months back, and he said, I had a family. Well, first of all, in the Bible, they talked about him as being an old man. He said, I was 28 when he met Mary. That's not old at all. And he said, I had a family before I met Mary. And my wife's name was Salome, and we had 2 young boys. But he said, they came and killed my family. And I asked him, I said, who are they? He said the Jewish priests had soldiers reporting to them. They were part of their organization. And because he was a Buddhist, they came and killed his family. So he was, he said he felt guilty, he felt responsible for that. And, that bothered him greatly. So, and then, there's some other things that fit along with that line. And I asked him, I said, how much I said, there's not much written about you in the New Testament. I said, how much of it is true? He said, very little. And I said, is it true that they tried to diminish yourself and your importance because you were a follower of Buddhism? He said, that's exactly what they did. And it was the church again. He said they did the same thing with Mary Magdalene. She wasn't a prostitute. He said, in fact, she was a disciple of Jesus. Jesus had female disciples. He had a lot more than 12. So it's been fascinating hearing the truth come out. And my feeling is, I've said it to Gabriel, I said, the general public needs to have access to this information. And I asked him, I said, is there anything written, any books, any articles written about the 12 souls? He said, no, on the earth. He said, no, there is nothing written about them. I said, why? Why did they wait for so long to tell us? He said, humanity was not ready. They had not evolved to the point of being able to handle the information. But apparently, as humanity, even though we've got some examples that are not, not leading the pack, in good behavior, but humanity as a whole has come to the point where they can be given that information. So, thank you for your question. Anybody else?
Tom, has Jesus said where he is buried, where his grave is?
No, he has not. Let me tell you what he did tell me. I asked him, I said, what did you do after you healed? I said, how long did it take you to heal from being crucified? He said 6 months. I said, how long were you on the cross? He said, I was on the cross 7 days. And I said, how long were you in the burial cave? He said, 7 days. I said, what did you do after you healed from the crucifixion? He said, I traveled to different countries. And Andrakis Sarati, who I've really come to care about greatly, Andrakis said, that Jesus would come to Bhutan to visit him. And I said, well, how'd he get there? That's a long way by donkey, it's a long way. And he said, Jesus could bilocate himself. He could reduce his physical body to a series of atoms, send him through the ether, and then reconstitute himself in Bhutan. And when I interviewed Mary, because I had heard from Andrakis that Mary and her family also came to visit, and I said, how did you get there? And she said, Jesus could bilocate the whole family. And I said, was that because he was in the Himalayas? Did Andrakis Sarati teach him that? And she said, no, he was born with the ability to do it. And then when I talked to Mary, she confirmed that, of course. And then I said, well, is it just people in the Himalayas that can do this? She goes, no, there are people all around the world that can bilocate. So I haven't met any yet, but it's a fascinating subject.
Yes, you would expect him to be able to do out-of-body work.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was supposed to have gone to Tibet and India.
He did. He went to the U.S. too, and South America. He loved America, especially the Native Americans. And when we interviewed Hiawatha, the Hiawatha, I think, lived in the 1500s. But he said the tribe, he was Iroquois and another tribe. There were 5 tribes that came together in the Iroquois Confederation, which their constitution was the model for the American Constitution. But they knew of Jesus. They had a separate name for him, and they talked about him coming to visit them. So I'm not sure. I think one time I asked Gabriel how long did he live, and he said he lived to be 80 years of age. But whenever he went back to Israel, he had to disguise himself because they thought he had died. The Jewish priests and those guys thought he had died. So he would always go in disguise. And when I talked to Joseph, one of the questions was, after Jesus was an adult, I said, did you still help to teach him? And he goes, I was very careful about teaching Jesus. I would let him ask me questions, and then we'd go into the woods because he didn't want people to think that he was converting him to become a Buddhist. He said that would have been a disaster. So anyway, any other questions?
Thank
Was
you.
he an Essene? That's all I'd like to know. Was he an Essene? Did he mention that?
He was. He
Yeah.
was. Mary was. All the disciples were. John the Baptist was. That's another subject that I've been fascinated by, is the Essenes. Yeah, in fact, it dawned on me, one thing that Jesus would say when we talk, he said, the primary thing is to remember the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I thought, that's not spiritualism. That's metaphysics. It's like the spiritual laws; they're all part of metaphysics. So as I have interviewed these folks, I've come to the realization they're not attached to any dogma or creed or religion. Their metaphysics is the way of truth, the way of the truth. I asked one time another master teacher, I don't remember which one, but I said, are there any churches in the spirit world? He said, no, there aren't. And Jesus and Mary, and Mary is very careful not to criticize anybody. In fact, I asked her, I said, there are millions of people that pray to you. I said, I'm sure when they come into the spirit world, they make their transition, they want to look you up. And I said, how do you handle that? How do you handle all these people wanting to find you? She said, that's a good question. She said, I have trained a group of women to be able to understand my life, and they meet with these people that recently, come back into the spirit world, and they explain she's not the mother of God, she's not, a savior, she's just a regular person. And so that cuts down. And Jesus said the same thing. He said, I've trained a group of people to meet with folks that want to meet with me because I just don't have the time to meet with them,
Everybody.
So it's fascinating.
All right, my question, Tom, is your website up to date? Is it current for 2024 for
It's
those
not.
classes? The
It's not.
spirit circles are the teaching.
No, I need to update it. That's something I'm behind in. But I can
Okay.
tell you that the second Thursday is the guide circle, and the
Mhm.
fourth Thursday is the spirit talk.
So how do we sign up for it? If
All you have to do is email me, and I can sign you up. It's
okay.
tnewman@gte.net. And I have also a constant contact group of about 500 people, and I send them a flyer of everyone that we're hosting, each year. Like we're going to be working with Gerald O'Hara and Eric Cargill come April. They're coming over from York, England. But Eric is a wonderful deep trance medium, and they're both really good teachers and mediums. But yeah, if you just send me an email, I'll respond to you, and I can send you the current flyer, which tells you how to do it.
I'm interested perhaps in how do we get or order or purchase the recordings?
I'm the one that sells those.
Okay, because
And,
is like if we're on your website, would you have a list of the recordings of
Well,
who?
That's something I need to do, but I tell you what, I do have a list in Microsoft Word.
Mhm,
If you will email me, I'll send you the list.
mhm.
As you will be, and again, it's 3.5 years of interesting topics. Well, up until we started doing the interviews, interesting topics. There's one topic that was 7 ascended beings who are believed to be gods when they were on the earth.
Wow. Okay.
That's Odin. That's Diana. And apparently they weren't gods, but they had abilities that people thought they were, very special. And each one comes in and very humbly says what their ability was and, why people thought they were gods.
Wow.
But yeah, Madame
And
Blavatsky has spoken several times, and, again, lots and lots of folks. But I have them. I have them on a file, and I can very easily. And the Spirit Talk is going to be again this coming Thursday. And the way I look at it, this is knowledge that doesn't exist anywhere on this planet.
Yeah.
So it's that again. My back leg is thumping on the floor. "Arrgh! Give me more." Because the truth is the truth, and there was a question before we started about how do you know if something's true. Well, I think it was Gary that said, "You feel it." I don't demand evidence from every person that I come into contact with. It's insulting, really, to many of them. But I know if they come through Steve, or if they come through David Thompson, if they come through Stuart Alexander, they're the real thing, the real McCoy. And, for me, I want to learn as much as I can because I have so many people that rely on me to give them the truth. You get to be a certain age and you're not interested in somebody's dream, the special dream, or a book they've read or a workshop they've taken. You're interested in the truth.
Yeah.
Because, time's running out. There's not much runway left,
Yeah.
But I'll send that.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. And you're saying this next meeting is going to be with the multidimensionals?
Yeah, well, he's going to talk on multidimensional beings.
Okay.
And here's what he said. And he was known as Osiris. He was known as Zeus. He was known as Odin. This Osri, O-S-R-I. He says multidimensional beings, who they are, what they're for, and why they may be among us now. You, in fact, may be one and not even know it. And again, so that's his choice. Now, here again, I would imagine those 12 souls, they were created right after God was, and God created itself, which I find is fascinating. But, he's think of all the knowledge that he has had. The Earth is we're one of the youngest planets that's inhabited. In fact, I heard Spirit say one time, I think it was Gabriel, he said, the other planets, they have more knowledge and more history because they're older. He said what a lot of people do is they'll have a lifetime on another planet, like Osiris or the Pleiades or whatever, and then they'll come back to the Earth to share that knowledge. Again, it's at the soul level. They'll share that knowledge with people there. So it's fascinating, the truth.
Well, I look forward to it. So
Good.
Thank you so much.
Basically, on the CDs, there are 2 CDs for basically every interview and every Spirit Talk. If somebody buys between 1 and 3, it's $20. It costs $5 just to mail it. But if somebody buys 4 or more, then we drop the price to $15. So it's, I've had some people. I had one lady the other day, she ordered every talk that was done in 2023, and there were 14 of them. She said, if I had, this is a lady in St. Petersburg, Florida, she said, if my house were to catch fire, I would grab my computer, I'd grab my box of, special things, memories from family, and I'd grab my CDs. And I'm thinking, you didn't say a word about your husband. Don't you think you'd grab him also?
Would you ever think of converting those from CDs to like MP3, like downloadable?
You must have ESPN. Spirit asked me 12 years ago to write 3 books. And they said, you sat in classes with Dorothy's guides and my guides for 33 years. And then Don DeGar was the Chesterfield medium who came with us for 7 years. He was another trumpet medium. He said, you've had 40 years. We'd like you to put together what you learned in those classes over 40 years, put them into 3 books. Well, I've got the first one done. The second one is ready to be edited. And I just got Spirit's permission to put these interviews in the 3rd book. Put an interview there. And I just got some interpretive software that you can take an MP3 and put it into the software, and it will produce it into a Word document within 20 minutes. And I asked 2 different Spirit teams, and they said yes. It took about a month to get permission from Steve's team, but he said yes, you can do it. See, we want you to put an editorial comment between the talks, which I can say, well, this was done on such and such a day. I said, is it true that none of this information about the 12 original souls is anywhere on the earth? And he goes, that's true. He said, then he paused for a moment. He said, maybe you'll be the one to bring it out, make it available, which is my thought, because here we'll have two of the original souls plus Gabriel talking about the 12 original souls. There'll be three talks so far. So I haven't gotten to the point of doing it's because the files are so big, doing this, emailing the audio parts, but I do think putting them into a book is going to be a great way to go. And again, it's the stuff about Joseph, Andronicus Sarati. He took Jesus out into the desert, and they stayed because Joseph had invited him to come and stay with his family. Jesus, in addition to having, Joseph, in addition to having the 5 boys, they had 2 daughters also, but they were both reincarnated when we did that Spirit talk in 2020. But, the idea of having all that information available, and, like I said, they've been just very strong about it. Anyway, I asked Andronicus about going into the desert I said, how long were you in the desert with Jesus? He said, 2 months. I said, what did you take with you? He said, we took just our clothing. He said, Jesus and Andronicus learned how to take the mana, the life energy all around them, and create food and water. And that's how they survived. He said at the end of his interview, he said, you won't find anything about me in the internet. There are no books written about me, Andronicus Sarati. I said, why is that? He goes, the church declared I was the devil. Again, they didn't like the fact that he was teaching Jesus. He was counseling Jesus. Jesus said that, I think it was Jesus or Mary, one of them said that Gabriel met with Jesus when he was about 27 to share with him what the future of his life was going to be, that his teachings were going to influence millions of people on the earth, actually billions. Well, Jesus was very concerned that he'd be up to the task. So they brought Andronicus Sarati in to counsel Jesus, and tell him, yes, they wouldn't give you this task if you couldn't do it, et cetera, et cetera. And then again, I said, what did you do, when you were out in the desert? Well, if you remember, I think it's in Matthew, they talk about Jesus going out into the desert and being tempted by the devil. The devil said, you can be, you can rule over everybody if you just accept me as your savior and all that. And Jesus said, no, I'm not going to do that. But it was really Andronicus Sarati that story originally cast him as the devil. And he's, when you talk to him, listen to him, there's no way he's the devil. In fact, actually, if you decide to order some of these CDs, it's wonderful listening to them speak. Andronicus Sarati, Jesus, Mary, You hear them speak, Joseph, in their own. It's not their vocal chords, but it's their words.
Thank you very much, Tom. Very interesting presentation. Very fascinating.
Thank you.
Do these figures ever talk about prophecy and what is to come next year, the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
You know, you must have ESPN also. Because I'll tell you, they have to follow the spiritual laws, and they don't want to do anything that takes away our free will. But when David Thompson was here, and Wendy, I know Wendy and Victor know him very well. He was here in September. He did 6 seances. He's a materialization medium. In one of his seances, and there's only Spirit has told me there's only 5 materialization mediums in the world, but in one of those seances, I'm his group leader, so I'm the one that's in charge of the humans, But somebody came up to me, and so I sit at the first chair in a U. There's 2 first chairs on either side of the U. But someone came up to me and kind of hit me pretty hard on my right shoulder, my right arm. And I thought, that's unusual. I've had people touch me, but I've never had that happen. And then the person hit me a couple of times. They weren't as hard, but then we heard a person speak, and he said, I could not trance through somebody who was not an American. He said, the anniversary of my birthday is coming up. This was in September. He said, my name is John F. Kennedy. He said, I've never tranced through anybody in the 60 years, I think, that he's been gone. He said, we had to go through my energy field to get over to David, so he could speak and do all that stuff. And I thought, anytime, anything I could do. I mean, it didn't hurt me or anything. But he said, boy, in the middle of his chatting with us, he said, boy, has the world changed since I was here. And we said, oh yeah. And he said, well, I can tell you that soon the world will go back to being what it was before. And that's as close as a prophecy that I have heard, Of course, there's a reason for everything that happens. It's just a matter of trying to understand it and go from there. But basically, and I listened to. We had 28 people on the guide circle last week, and I have to sit through all of those interactions because I'm the host. If there's anything that goes wrong or somebody drops out of Zoom and they need to get back in or whatever, I take care of it. But the overall energy has been positive about the present and about the future. So, and people have asked all kinds. You can ask any question you want. They've asked all kinds of questions. But, and I had this question asked of me privately, within the last week or two. And I said, well, John F. Kennedy was pretty upbeat about the future. And I said, things are going to, they're going to right themselves, and there's some areas, of course, that need to be righted. But anyway, they won't tell you when you're going to die. So they won't tell you your soul name. We all have a soul name that when we were created, that became our name. Right now, we're the name of our last incarnation. And something else, Richard, that I found interesting, Jesus, Buddha was very interesting. Mary, George Washington, several others, I've asked them, do you plan to reincarnate? And they've all said no. They said, we can do more good on this side of life than we can by coming back through the earth expression. And I tell you, if I have an extra half minute, Leonardo da Vinci, I didn't know anything about him other than he did the Last Supper and, he did the Mona Lisa. I said to him, I said, when I was I would get readings with Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, 3 a year. And I would save up a lot of my questions when people would ask me and I didn't know the answer. And I said, I was talking to Gabriel and I said, I was looking at the Last Supper and there's a woman right on the right side of Jesus standing around the table. And I said, was that Mary Magdalene? He goes, oh, yes, it was. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, Gabriel told me you were sending a message to the Vatican. He goes, yeah, whenever I get a chance, I give it to the church. He put that emphasis, I give it to the church. Anyway, it was funny. But, like the Mona Lisa, he said, I needed to do the work because that's how I brought income in, to me. But he was a riot. He was really funny, very funny.